Cada psiquiatra hace un juramento de seguir un código de conducta ética, de poner el cuidado de sus pacientes por encima de todo. Pero de todas las disciplinas médicas, la psiquiatría tiene el peor récord de fraude y abuso.
Psychiatry is almost a license to print money. If a doctor were clever enough, and many of them are, there's no reason that they couldn't make at least $500,000 a year fraudulently and get away with it in psychiatry.
I don't purport to have deposed every psychiatrist in Las Vegas. I can tell you for a fact I haven't. Maybe I've deposed half, and by and large they were a dishonest, deceitful, lying bunch of people.
Tan frecuentes son sus prácticas engañosas y criminales, las cuales facturan, que los investigadores de seguros tienen una frase de jerga para ello: el hola de California y el apretón de manos de $100.
$100 handshake is when usually a patient is institutionalized. Psychiatrist, psychologist will visit that person, shake hands with them, say, hello, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I'm taking care of your problem here, and then leaves.
They might have 10 or 20 patients there. They bill an hour for each one, and they might be in the hospital for a total of 30 minutes. So 20 patients, 20 hours, and they'd send the bills off to Medicaid.
We see that most of the victims of recovered memory therapy were women who had excellent health insurance, whether it was government insurance or private insurance, because many insurance policies wouldn't pay for this kind of long-term nonsense. So those people were targeted because of the nature of the insurance that they had.
Cada año, la industria psiquiátrica de Estados Unidos defrauda al gobierno y a las aseguradoras privadas por $40,000 millones usando cualquier medio posible para engañar al público.
There were some advertisements, very seductive advertisements, for people wanting to lose weight and were having problems losing weight. And they would be given, all expenses paid to go to a particular spa. But when they got to this spa and went in and signed in, it wasn't a spa, it was a psychiatric center. And then they couldn't get out.
What instead they received massive doses of mind-altering drugs, and they were kept for a lengthy period of time, and their insurance carrier was billed tremendous amounts of money for something that was unnecessary.
Pero sus mentiras van más allá del pabellón psiquiátrico y hasta los tribunales, donde como testigos pagados dirán cualquier cosa para cobrar sus honorarios.
A psychiatric expert who will have one opinion in one scenario and a completely opposite opinion in another scenario based on which law firm or governmental agency is paying for his time.
The psychiatrist, on one hand, will tell the public that suicide can be prevented, but will go into court and tell a jury that suicide cannot be prevented. And then once you show his prior inconsistent statements, you also show that he is paid very well by pharmaceuticals, then the jury says, you know what, we're not so sure about you because you just lied to us.
Añadamos a su codicia, deshonestidad y avaricia sus crímenes sexuales. Constituyendo tan solo el 6% de los médicos de Estados Unidos, los psiquiatras son responsables de la tercera parte de los delitos sexuales cometidos por médicos.
It has happened so often that by the mid-80s, the insurance companies who insure physicians across America started writing sexual claims out of the policies altogether. That's how common it was.
The system was so broken that more than 25,000 complaints had been registered, but nothing acted upon. When a psychiatrist has a patient, a female patient, and abuses them sexually, there's a very high probability they'll get away with it.
I've seen many cases where the mental health professional becomes very disturbed and is using very strange and odd treatments, and that can go on for many years with no one finding out about it because it's not very public. It's quite private. Things happen behind closed doors.
Trágicamente, sus crímenes sexuales a menudo implican niños. Un buen ejemplo es el del Dr. C. Markham Berry. En apariencia, un miembro muy respetado de su comunidad, Pero todo eso se hizo añicos cuando lo arrestaron por haber violado sexualmente a los niños. Sacaron de su casa camionetas llenas de pornografía infantil y la investigación posterior descubrió que había violado sexualmente a sus pacientes, niños entre 7 y 17 años a quienes fotografió y violó sexualmente. El Estado lo describió como los 50 años de una aventura sexual desenfrenada y clandestina de Berry con niños. Este no es un incidente aislado, es el carácter cuidadosamente enmascarado de los miembros de esta profesión. En las ciudades, los estados y los países podrán encontrarse psiquiatras que cometen violaciones, abuso sexual, asesinato y fraude. Y como vas a ver, toda la credibilidad de la psiquiatría depende del mayor fraude de todos.
I was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder,
ADHD,
mild depression,
Major depression.
Manic depressive.
Borderline personality disorder.
Compulsive
social
disorder.
anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia.
ADHD. Sleep disorder. Identity problem disorder.
There's no such thing as mental disorder. A mental disorder is whatever someone says it is, and if the person saying this is a mental disorder has enough power and influence, then people believe, oh, that's a mental disorder.
Pero no se puede tener poder o influencia sin credibilidad. Así que la psiquiatría fabrica la suya.
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease, and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor, say aye.
It's marketed as a scientifically based document. Now, the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the DSM, do a lot of work to create an aura of scientific precision around the DSM, but it's not scientifically based.
Desde la primera edición del DSM, el número de trastornos mentales que se incluyó por votación en el Manual de Diagnóstico de la Psiquiatría ha llegado a 374. Y con cada nuevo trastorno, los psiquiatras crean otra forma de defraudar al público.
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to say a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things. You know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403.16, that's different in some important and scientifically proven way from someone who has 403.17. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Aunque parezca increíble, mientras presentan el DSM al mundo como un hecho científico, los psiquiatras admiten libremente su absoluta falta de base científica.
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.